The new book is also about a former Leith resident who starts a new life in the USA, and I would pitch it as being a history of violence meets Saw. And it is, of course, the main protagonist is the inimitable Franco Begbie. So can we tempt you to read a little sample just to whet everybody's appetite before we get into talking about it?
Oh, I don't know, Kev. Chapter 15, I think. Yeah, I'm going to read a bit. This is like when Franco comes back to Edinburgh, and he kind of doesn't want to come back, but his son's been murdered, so he feels he should go to the funeral. Very reluctantly, he's not really that interested. So he's met his other son, Michael, who they didn't get on, they had a big fight, and he wants to go and see his ex, June. Michael's ostentatious non-cooperation is superfluous. The address he's heading for has stuck in Franco's mind, as it's next to the stair where a much-hated rival of his had once lived. Walking from the foot of the walk along Duke Street to Easter Road and up Wrestlerig Road, he looks at a video clip that has come in on his almost dead US phone. Grace and Eve are sitting on the couch waving to the camera, one with enthusiasm, the other coyly guarded. Melanie's text, "We miss you and we love you." Franco feels something stir inside him, but clicks off the phone and fights it down. It is Loch End, and in the drizzle and darkening streets surrounding him, conjuring up nothing but a steady flow of paggers and vendettas past. This is no place for him to be conflicted. He lurches into a bus shelter and pulls out his new Tesco's phone, trying to punch in Melanie's cell number through the use of antiquated multifunction keys. Rage rises in his chest, and he tries to breathe slowly as the activity of his big fingers and the jumping display on the liquid crystal, the shifting hieroglyphics slowly start to take shape as a number. Present with him in the bus shelter, a dead pigeon, a discarded kebab, which looks in better shape than the deceased bird, and two empty tins of Tennant's Super Lager, one stacked neatly on top of the other. Euphoria rises in Franco as Melanie's full number with the US +1 dialing code is completed in its entirety. Then the phone dies. It just switches itself off. Franco presses the buttons feverishly. Nothing. It's perished. He looks at it in searing fury, about to crush it under his heel. Instead, he boots the cans down the pavement and stuffs the phone back into his pocket. Breathe. 1, 2, 3. The rain has whipped up and beats on the back of the bus shelter as Franco briefly succumbs to a phantom memory, warm and good, but never completely dancing out of his mind's shadow to fully reveal itself. A girl's hand touching his, her hair grazing his face, her scent in his nostrils. Did things like this happen to him before Melanie? Surely yes, but he can't allow it. He can't permit this place to be anything other than what he's made it. Then the drumming eases off as the wind drops and the rain peters out, back into a thin drizzle. The stair is easily found. At one time, he made fairly advanced plans to firebomb the house next door, which was occupied by Cha Morrison, his old nemesis. It astonishes him now to think that he cared enough about this guy to consider doing that. What great crime had Morrison committed against him, or he against Morrison? Nothing whatsoever sprang to mind. It had all been talk, which had then ramped up, becoming a bizarre sequence of threat and counter-threat. Otherwise, there was zero basis for the rivalry. They had jointly manufactured this conflict to give their lives drama, imagining it into brutal reality. He goes into the neighbouring stair and realises that of the 6 flats, he can't recall the one that is occupied by June. He's got no idea what name she will be using. There is no sign of Chisholm, her maiden name, or, to his relief, Begbie, which she'd taken to calling herself and had registered Sean and Michael's births under, although she and Franco had never married. No door suggests great wealth, so he opts for the one that gives the strongest impression of teeming squalor. It's painted black, some of which has spilled onto the frame, and it looks battered with a sellotaped, yellowing piece of paper indicating that a J. McNaughton resides there. He taps on the door, and sure enough, June answers. Even since he'd briefly seen her at his mother's funeral, surprisingly obese, June has massively expanded. It's impossible to square this version with the thin, brittle one of his memory. She looks at him and, for an excruciating second, seems as if she's going to hug him. Her lips quiver and her eyes implore, but then she turns abruptly and heads inside. Assailed by the smell of cats and old, congealed, deep-fried fat, and most of all, stale tobacco, he follows her into the flat. Franco finds it hard to believe that he's facing her. She is sat opposite him in a faded floral pattern armchair, part of a suite that is way, way too big for the cramped council flat. He can barely fathom how small the homes are. The room seems to conspicuously flaunt poverty. "The game's no straight, aye," she says, obviously doped up in antidepressants. Her eyes seem dulled and set back into a now bulbous head, which was once little more than a skull. "Aye," he agrees, as a weary boy of around 14 comes in. He fixes June with a sneer of defiant belligerence as he picks up a packet of cigarettes from the coffee table, then swiftly leaves. "Yours?" Franco asks. "They are my fags!" she shouts after the departing boy as she sparks up again. "No, the fags, the laddie." "Aye, that's Gerard." June takes a drag, her cheeks buckling in. "I've got Andrea and Chloe Tay, as well as your Michael and Sean." Her eyes glaze over, and a tissue torn from a box on the coffee table goes right to them. As she coughs raucously, Franco watches June shake, her fat wobbling inside shapeless, washed-out leisure-wear garments. Her first pregnancy and Sean's birth had seemed to wreck her body, but rather than bloat, June had shrank into a Belson skeleton, and he'd pretty much lost interest in her after that. He'd muttered something like, "Fuck's sake," when she told him she was expecting Michael. There had been the jail and their domestic life together, in which he recalled her bathed in blue light from the television set through a fog of cigarette smoke. June is now obese and looks as grey-skinned as he'd done after his longest prison stretch. She inhales again, her chunky face caving in so radically it's as if her teeth have been extracted. "So you got married again, eh?" "Aye, official," he announces, looking coolly at her, waving his rings. "No just common law. We had to, for my immigrant status. Wanted to as well, but if you feel the love, why not make the statement?" June bristles a little. "Aye, they say it was an American lassie that you met in the jail." "She was an art therapist." "Aye." She expects me to say, "I ken how it looks." Fuck that. "She's young, good-looking, intelligent, from a wealthy family. We've got 2 lovely daughters. So what about you? Any romantic ties?" June looks up at him and coughs, managing to shake her head before being beset with an eye-watering fit. "That's now it'll kill you," he observes. June sucks in some air and wheezes. "You pack them in, likes?" "I stopped to peeve as well. Got bored with it all, eh?" "What about the other stuff? The fighting?" "I got fed up with the jail. This art thing's a good living and I enjoy it." June lifts her head. It seems to sink back into her body. Franco can't discern the neck. "You were always good at art, back at the school." "Right," Franco laughs. Angie Knight, when she heard you were back, she goes to me. And June's expression takes on a coquettishness he finds grotesque. Tell you what, June, I wouldn't be surprised if you and Franco ended up back together. I would, Franco says brutally, thinking, she's a fucking simpleton. Why didn't I see it before? Probably because I was too. June's face suddenly and dramatically flushes red. It's such a violent, abrupt transformation that for a second, Franco thinks she's having a seizure. Then she starts to cry. Your son, Frank, your Sean, what are you doing about it? Somebody killed their laddie and you're doing nothing about it. See ye, he says, getting up to leave. It was a familiar pattern. They would whisperingly condemn his violence with those sour, baleful expressions until they wanted some cunt sorting out. Then he would suddenly become the big hero. Manipulation. He discussed all this with Melanie, with his mentor, John Dick, the prison officer. It suited them all to keep him as he was. It still suits him. He will leave them here back at Edinburgh. They can either shut the door in his face or seize him in a hypocritical embrace. It won't matter. He'll be walking away from them all. Find out who did it, Frank, and hurt them. You're good at that, she shouts after him. This stops him in his tracks. He turns to contemplate her. I mind I had battered you bad a couple of times. Once when you were expecting him, Frank says. That was just wrong. Christ, it's a bit late to apologise now. Who's apologising? It was wrong, he accepts. But I'm not sorry I hurt you. I'm just indifferent, always was. I had no emotional connection to you whatsoever. So how can I be sorry? I'm the murderer, you. June stammers, then explodes. You've no emotional connection to anybody. Anger is an emotion, Franco says, opening the door and exiting. He goes downstairs and out onto the street, heading to the bus stop. Thinks of the nights in bed with June. She'd had a flush of desirable youth. Her body had been lithe and firm, as arousing as the insolent whip of her fringe, and there was that slutty chewing of her gum that excited and irritated him in equal measures. Yet he can't ever remember caressing her, only fucking her hard. In his pockets, 2 phones, the Tesco one, so cold and rough and dead. He pushes it aside and gently squeezes the sleek American iPhone. He thinks of Melanie, spooning with her in the night, the fragrance of her as her blonde hair tickles his nostrils, the sickle-shaped birthmark on her wrist, the love flowing through the skin on their bodies like blood, how she was his tender underbelly, how if they wanted to plunge him with a knife, they would go straight through her into him, into that part rendered soft by loving. Thank you for listening, folks. Cheers.